Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Alberta News and Views. Today, the best premier in Canada, Danielle Smith, dropped a nuke on Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly. Check this out.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly talked about, she was asked specifically if in negotiations with Trump, Canada would consider an energy embargo on the United States. And I want to, as leverage, what do you think, what do you make of what she said?
Well, first of all, it's oil and gas that's owned by the provinces, principally Alberta, and we won't stand for that. And you should never, ever threaten something you cannot do. And I would encourage the minister to look at a map of where Line 5 goes. Line 5 comes down through Michigan to get to Sarnia. And then that feeds the bulk of the supply needed for Ontario and connects with Line 9, which feeds the bulk of the product needed for Quebec. And so if you cut off that line, you are cutting off Ontario and Quebec. So I would encourage the ministers to either understand how our integrated pipeline system works, and start looking at ways that we would be able to practically respond, because there's no point in making empty threats that cannot be executed on. So there are other things I'm sure that that we'll all talk about collectively, but let's just remember how integrated our markets are with the Enbridge system, the TC Energy system, that we have a product going back and forth across the border every single day. And we cannot do anything that harms Canadians in such a substantial way. So I just don't take that as a credible threat. I'm sure that the U.S. administration won't either. So we should talk about things that we actually can do as opposed to empty threats.
Yeah, and there's more. For all of you out there that don't know, the Liberal NDP party in Canada has been trying to cut oil and gas production in Alberta, all in the name of climate, for years, and they have failed miserably. So it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for them to use this as an excuse to cut oil and gas production. But now that they know it'll cut off their own home heating, maybe they won't want to go down that road. This is very important. This is a chunk out of the interview that hasn't been really shown today, about the instability in Canada. And it shows just how big the divide could get from the West and the East in Canada if there actually is a trade war, especially with energy. Check this out.
You'd hinted a little bit earlier that if there is some sort of export ban on Alberta oil, that would precipitate a national unity crisis. From your perspective as Premier of Alberta, what does that look like, other than, I don't know, people being mad in the streets? Or is it a separation referendum? Like, what are we talking about when you say national unity crisis?
Well, I can't predict what Albertans would do, but as you know, the part of my strategy over the last 2 years has been to say that we can have a constructive relationship with Canada, and I would hope that would continue to be the case. Here's the thing I find irritating about Eastern politicians making that argument. The reason I find it irritating is because we could have had Energy East, which would have expanded our ability to support our friends in Eastern Canada and also been an export market off the East Coast. We could have had Northern Gateway, which would have expanded and supported export markets in a more substantial way off the West Coast. And Eastern politicians advocated against those things. And so we went to work on expanding our access to the United States with additional egress, with twinning, with looping. We did that because the rest of the country wasn't interested in having that conversation. So to now make the argument that that's a point of leverage is going to be very, very irritating, not only to me, but also to my fellow Albertans. if they want to start the conversation by saying, gosh, maybe we should have had Energy East and Northern Gateway, let's restart that so that we're not so dependent on one customer, I am more than happy to have that conversation. And I hope that's where the conversation goes. But having been so hostile to Alberta's interests and having canceled so many important projects that would have allowed us to have a diversified customer base, it's outrageous to me that they would even propose it.
I've been saying it for years. All roads lead to Western independence. And if we ever got our independence, Albertans would ask themselves, why didn't we do this years ago? Every single year, it just makes more and more sense. It doesn't matter what government is in the Emerald City called Ottawa. It is systemic corruption. It is time, and it should be obvious. Really, it should be obvious. There is so much resource. There are so many resources in Alberta that we could be so prosperous. We could easily be our own country, just shooting out pipelines, energy, innovation, everything, anywhere. Complete reform, a proper government built by the people, for the people, without the ultimate systemic corruption of the Canadian federal government. Seriously, it's time. Follow me on Substack and Spotify and YouTube. I will keep you updated with as much as I can when I can. All of you out there, like, share, and take care.